What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome back to the podcast. Big game in Norman on Saturday. Huge SEC showdown. Oklahoma versus Ole Miss. Two 6-1 teams. Two teams with playoff aspirations on the line. You got a clash of football philosophies. Brent Venables preaches that suffocating, disciplined defense going up against Lane Kiffin's fast-paced and explosive offense. So we're going to break down all the matchups here. We're going to talk about the key storylines and what this game means for both programs in terms of the remainder of the season. So here we go. Thanks for hanging out with us on this episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. You've got an 11 a.m. kickoff in Norman, Oklahoma, Ole Miss. I feel like I say this a lot, but I really mean it this time around. I think I mean it every time, but this is one of those defining games of the season, just in terms of the respective programs, the SEC landscape. Both teams come in at 6-1. Both teams still have championship aspirations, both within the conference and then reaching the college football playoff. Both teams are trying to prove that they belong in these conversations, that they belong in the conversation with the Georgias and the Alabamas for a shot at Atlanta, that they belong in the conversation with 12 other teams in terms of a playoff spot. And this matchup gives you strength on strength when you look at Brent Venables' defense against Lane Kiffin's offense. Which you go beyond the matchup itself, though, I think there's so much at stake for both sides. I think this game is about validation. I use the word identity a lot, but I think it's here. There's momentum heading into the heart of the SEC schedule. It's crazy how different these schedules are between the two teams after this game on Saturday. I'll break that down for you a little bit. We know what Oklahoma has coming up, but you may be surprised to see what's on the other side of Oklahoma for Lane Kiffin and the Rebels. So let's set the tone here for this game. Let's talk about the setting. The Sooners come in off of a dominant win over South Carolina, a performance that pretty much reminded everyone just how physical and how well coached this defense is. Oklahoma allowed very little through the air. They tackled well in space. And look, both sides of the ball, so shockingly, they absolutely controlled the line of scrimmage. It was that type of performance that you expect from a Brent Venables defense, though. It was detailed, it was intense, and we like that word relentless. We throw that word around a lot in Norman, but we mean it when we use it. But here's the thing. South Carolina and Ole Miss, two completely different challenges. With Lane Kiffin, what Ole Miss wants to do is they want to dictate tempo. They want to snap the ball every 15 to 20 seconds. They want to keep your personnel stuck on the field. They want to force your defense to make decisions on the fly. Their offense, it thrives on confusion, speed, creating those mismatches in space. So for Oklahoma, I believe this is really the first true test of whether this defense can travel. And I know I've used that phrase a lot. So here's what I mean. That they can stay disciplined and effective against an elite SEC offense that plays completely a different brand of football than what they've seen so far this season. And for Oklahoma, there's a lot on the line here. I think this is a legitimacy game. Oklahoma's had a great start to conference play this season. But there's still that lingering question out there that can they beat one of the league's top programs in a statement-type matchup. What I mean by that is, like, you look at Oklahoma's the 2 years in the SEC. Their best win in the conference is Alabama last year. This year, their best win in the conference, probably South Carolina. But that Alabama game, it didn't really mean much. It made them bowl eligible, but it wasn't a statement-type game. This is a statement-type game for Oklahoma. Because people are saying on one side of the spectrum, Oklahoma's back in the hunt after what happened with Texas. That was an anomaly. That wasn't the norm. And then you got the people on the other side of the spectrum saying, well, Oklahoma hasn't really faced anybody of value And the best team they played was Texas, which I disagree with that, but I digress. They smacked the Sooners around. Now, Texas did smack the Sooners around. But this game, this is a statement that will determine which side of that coin is correct. And while South Carolina, while that was a solid win, Ole Miss, it's a different animal. And what this game does is it gives Oklahoma a chance to prove, I say this a lot, it gives them that chance to prove that they're not just adapting to the SEC, but they're really ready to thrive in it. And that's a phrase I use a lot. You don't just want to be in the SEC, you want to thrive in the SEC. And beating middle tier, lower tier teams doesn't prove you're thriving. Taking off Ole Miss, that's the statement right there. But the second thing, I think this is an opportunity for Oklahoma to show offensive growth. The defense has been the headliner so far this season, and rightfully so. But I think if Oklahoma really wants to compete for a title in the conference, the offense has to take the next step. And John Mateer was super efficient last week. He was careful with the ball. He was consistent in moving the chains. But Ole Miss is going to push the pace. Ole Miss is going to score points. What that means is that Oklahoma, they can't just play conservative and safe and expect to win this game 20-17. They're going to have to stretch the field. They're going to have to create explosive plays. And we have an article up about this. Shameless plug time. We have an article up about this on the website, heartland-sports.com. This could be the week where Ben Arbuckle opens up the playbook. He opens up a little bit more than what he had against South Carolina. He mixes tempo. He gets Isaiah Satania and Giovanni Gibson more involved. He gets, go back to the tight end. You see what this passing attack can do when it's challenged. And I think lastly, when you talk about this matchup, there's the playoff picture. A win here would put Oklahoma squarely in the SEC title race and keep them in the national conversation in terms of the playoff. And while a loss, it doesn't end their season. It does raise more big questions about whether they can keep pace with the elites, and not just in the conference, but around the country. Now, if you flip over to the other side of the field, I think for Ole Miss, this game is every bit as big, maybe even bigger, because Lane Kiffin's team is coming off of a tough road loss to Georgia last week. They moved the ball, but they couldn't keep up the pace defensively. So they're 6-1, just like Oklahoma. They're 3-1 in conference play, and they have to bounce back in order to stay alive for the race to get to Atlanta. They've built their identity around explosiveness. You got a quarterback in Trinidad Chambliss who loves pushing the ball downfield. You've got an effective running back in Kewan Lacey who is merging as really a dynamic playmaker for Lane Kiffin. And then you've got a wide receiver group that is deep, and they can stress you vertically. So the caveat here is Oklahoma's defense is going to be the fastest, most fundamentally sound unit that Ole Miss has played to this point of the season. So that means that this is also a validation game for Lane Kiffin and his offense. Can they execute under pressure? Can they maintain tempo against a defense that disguises so well and thrives on their own communication? Because Venable's defense, it's not just physical. They're smart. They disguise pressures. They rotate their safeties. They force quarterbacks to read every inch of the field. And if Ole Miss wants to win this game, they're going to have to stay patient. They're going to have to avoid negative plays, and they're going to have to find ways to keep Oklahoma from substituting. And just like Oklahoma, the Rebels' playoff hopes, they kind of hang in the balance here. This would be a second loss, but here's where it would damage Ole Miss. If you're Oklahoma and you lose this game, you still have a shot for redemption. You've still got Tennessee. You've still got Alabama. You've still got, I know I'm getting them out of order. You got Missouri. You got LSU. But Ole Miss doesn't have that. As it stands right now, Oklahoma is the final ranked opponent on their schedule. Their schedule: South Carolina, Florida, Citadel, Mississippi State. Those aren't necessarily going to be bounce back opportunities in terms of the playoff committee's viewpoint when you consider that they went 1-2 against the 3 ranked opponents on their schedule. And one of those was LSU, who may not be ranked much longer. So a loss for the Rebels on Saturday kind of makes their margin for error not just razor thin. I don't know what's more thin than razor thin, right? Because they're going to need help, I guess is what I'm saying, if they lose. But I think maybe the most fascinating storyline in this matchup, it's not about a player, it's not about it's more about the coaches. You got Brent Venables versus Lane Kiffin. 2 completely different football minds, 2 completely different philosophies. Venables builds from the ground up. He preaches discipline. He preaches structure. Execution is a must. And what he wants to do is he wants to suffocate you. He wants to limit his squad's own mistakes. And he wants to make every yard that you get a yard that was hard earned. And Lane Kiffin, he thrives on chaos. He likes to be unpredictable. He likes to push tempo. He likes to be aggressive. And what he wants to do is to get you off balance, to create confusion, and then strike quickly before you can reset. And so essentially what you've got here is old school defensive mastery meeting kind of new age offensive innovation. And when you get those 2 styles colliding on the same field, usually it's going to come down to who can adapt faster. So can Venables keep his defense fresh against Kiffin's relentless pace? Can Kiffin find cracks in a defense that really shows the same look twice? I mean, this is a chess match. And so the sideline adjustments, the situational calls, those are probably going to decide the game on Saturday. So with that said, here are some general keys for the game, in my opinion. Now, we're going to dig a little deeper into each side of the ball for Oklahoma in the second and third segments of this episode. But in general, here's a few keys I think are really important. I got 4 of them. Number 1, Oklahoma's defensive substitutions. Venables' defense is elite when it can rotate fresh bodies. But if Ole Miss is able to control tempo, the rotations become more difficult. And so the Sooners, they have to get off the field on 3rd down. The second thing is going to be offensive balance for Oklahoma. And we're going to talk more specifically about the offense here in a little while. But Torrey Blaylock has been a revelation at running back. And if the Sooners can stay balanced, establish the run early, and then build play action off of it, they'll keep Ole Miss on their heels. I think number 3, you got to look at explosive plays. Ole Miss thrives on them. Oklahoma has to generate some of their own. You can't play Ole Miss safe, right? You can't keep it conservative for 4 quarters and expect to win. And then I preach this every week, and we saw the benefit of it last week, the turnover margin. It's so simple. It is so simple, but it's so true. In games like this, 1 or 2 mistakes often decide the outcome. So when it's all said and done, to me, I think this game feels like a measuring stick for both programs. For Oklahoma, it's about showing that their SEC transition, it's not just about competing, but it's about contending now in year number 2. For Ole Miss, it's proven that they can win in a tough environment against one of the country's best defenses. And beyond the rankings and the records, I think it's about identity. There's that I word again. Does Oklahoma lean into its physical defensive first style and grind out a win, or do they trust their offense to take a step forward and go toe-to-toe to shootout? Now, we'll find out on Saturday, but one thing's for sure, I think Norman's going to be electric. I know it's an early kickoff. I think the crowd's going to be crazy. And I think both of these teams clearly have everything still in front of them to play for this season, and that ups the stakes even more.